This is the Wade Borth Podcast, where smart ideas spark new opportunities. If you're ready to see money in a whole new way and build a life on your terms, you're in the right place.
Hello, welcome back to the Wade Borth Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about a conversation that comes up quite often, and I just want to bring some clarity to the conversation. And it's really about retirement and retirement planning. And so most of you that know and listen to my podcast and have heard me talk know that retirement to me is something that it's different for every person. When you say retirement to one person versus retirement to the other, there's a lot of different connotations of what that means. Some people have worked in the same job. Maybe they've worked for a company. Maybe they work for the government. Maybe they've owned their own business. So retirement just really means a lot of different things. And so to me, I look at retirement as like, maybe it's retooling, right? What are we doing to bring a different chapter in our lives? Some people is like, I don't want to do anything. I want to put my feet up. I want to sit by the lake. I want to go fishing, golf, and whatever it might be. But the point is like, what are we doing to enjoy that retooling time? What are we doing to, go see the grandkids, if that's the thing in retirement? I was actually just talking to a client the other day. It's like, his idea of retirement is like following his grandkids and going, seeing a grandkid, traveling and engaging with the grandkids while his health is still there. So he wants to do it without the burden, I'm going to call it burden, of having to show up at a job and punching a clock, because that's what he's done all his life, right? So the idea of retirement is obviously different than everybody. So what I find really interesting, it's just an observation, is that everybody's definition of retirement is different, but how people approach it, I would say, is about 80 or 90% the same. So it's funny that they all have desired outcomes different, but what they want and how they want to achieve it, they're all doing it the same way. So it's just kind of funny. So I thought I would just address that today, because these are just observations from the conversation I was having. And one thing that I was really struck by is this idea of, hey, let me put all my money into the market, or put my money someplace and maybe just live off the interest. That's one approach. And what I find interesting about that idea is, people love pensions. They love their Social Security. If you have a pension at work, if you're working for the government, maybe that's why you pushed through for as long as you did, maybe you're in the military, guards, or whatever it is, you love the pension. So you love Social Security, you love a pension. But when we start talking like, hey, what could we do if we could provide you your own private pension, which just means you're transferring the risk, and we'll talk about what that risk looks like, to another organization. So you can have multiple layers of pension. And it's so funny because everybody's worried like, oh, I'm going to give up access to that money, or I want to put it in the market, or I want to put it on interest and live off the interest. Well, so here's the thing that I find really interesting about that conversation is that, we're putting a dependency on something that we can't control. Well, we could control if we chose to do it, but we're choosing not to do it. And what I mean by that is like, I'm going to put my money in a CD. Let's use that as an example. I'm going to put my money in a CD, and I can get 4% interest rate today, or I can get 5% interest rate, high yield. I'll live off the interest of that. I'll take all the money that I've sacrificed for, and I'll put it there. Which, okay, that works great until something changes that you can't control. Where's interest rate's going to be at 2, 3, 5 years from now? I have not a clue. I don't know that anybody has a clue. I can say, I think I have an opinion, like most people do. They have an opinion where they might go. My guess is they're going to go higher. But maybe they won't. Maybe they'll go lower. So the point is that you're living with a lot of uncertainty in your life. And the question is, do you want more certainty the further you get into retirement? Because again, the idea is, I want to be able to go do things that I haven't been able to do. And the more certainty you have, the greater ability do you have to go do those things. So again, our actions have to align with our values, what's important to us. But what I see is like there's this intersection. And so our actions are almost opposite of what our values are at that time. So it's just some interesting observations, because people will say, well, I'm going to take out, the rule is that we can take out 4% of our money, which is a stock and bond portfolio, and we won't run out of money. Well, at 4%, if that's truly how you're going to live it, there's probably still a 90% chance that you'll be successful, which means dying with $1, or you die with $1. So you have enough income and you'll just die with $1. So that's about a 90 or 95% probability. The question is like, do you want that? Do you want more certainty in your life than that? And also with the understanding that those that have assets are typically very nervous and they're scared and have a lot of fear during retirement, those with income lead a much better retirement. And so I've talked about this before in previous podcasts, but I just was like really excited to share this conversation with you because it was so fresh in my mind. And so, the idea is that if you're only taking 4% out, you're really unenjoying your retirement because, in essence, because baseball season right now when I'm recording this, you don't have a relief pitcher. You're depending so much on that one asset giving you that 4 or 5% distribution. That's the only asset you have, and you're like, that's what I'm going to depend on. And then so if you don't have a relief pitcher, you have to ease it out because you might be in retirement for the next 30 years. So what is the certainty that we can bring you? So let's talk about what are some solutions to that. So the risk is that you're going to run out of money. I think people can understand it's like thing we don't know. The unknown is, what's your rate of return going to be over the next 30 years, possibly in retirement? And then, how long are you going to live, right? That's the big unknown. And the point is we want money for the rest of our lives from the time we quote unquote retire or retool until we die, but we don't know when that's going to be. So we have to stretch those dollars out. And we live in a constant state of uncertainty, which leads into scarcity and fear about, well, I need to hold on to that asset because I don't know how long I'll need it. Well, what if we would take and transfer that risk over to an insurance company and say, hey, insurance company, I'm going to give you these dollars. And then in exchange for those dollars, I want a guaranteed income for the rest of my life. And right now, with where the interest rates are at and where insurance companies, they know how to manage that risk. They're going to say, hey, we can give you, a 7, 8, maybe even a 9% distribution rate. So that, which means if you got $1 million, there's, $70, $80, $90,000 potentially that they could be generating for you for the rest of your life, guaranteed. So now you've transferred all the risk over to the insurance company. And now you just, you wake up on the first of the month and you have a check in your mailbox. But people have fear about that because it's a little bit of the unknown. They love pensions, but they don't love when they have to fund their own pensions. So that's where I think the rub comes into play. But think about how valuable that is. They love the pension. They love Social Security. These are all just forms of annuities, right? And that's what insurance companies are designed to do, is to guarantee you a source of income for the rest of your life. Now, I'm not saying doing that with all your money, because again, we want a little bit of a relief pitcher. We need another bucket. But just entertain the idea that if you're getting to a point where you say, hey, I have some assets, I'm thinking about retooling, retiring, whatever you want to call it, changing careers, but don't want to be obligated to doing just, to just depending on one source of revenue. What if we could guarantee a portion of that revenue for you with your asset? So now you're not dependent on something you can't control. Because this is what's the great part about insurance companies, that they're taking all the risk because they know how to manage risk. What most people that are getting ready for retirement don't understand is that most people, including myself, do we really understand how to manage that risk? The risk of longevity, right? The interest rate risk, all the things that the reinvestment risk, all the things that are out there that are really pulling against our retirement, we don't really have a solid handle on how to handle that risk. People are like, well, I'm going to put my money in the market. It's not, I can get an index fund that's going to do blah, 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 whatever the return is. Hey, that's fabulous. But what if that doesn't work out? There's a great probability that won't work out in a very linear fashion. And if it's not working out, then where does that put you? So the idea is like, what's the worst case scenario and can you live with it? So let me just say that one more time. What is the worst case scenario with putting all my money in the market, and I'll just take 4 to 6% distribution rate on that, and I can live on that? And that all sounds great if everything works in a linear fashion, but we just know that's not going to happen. So the point is, what is your relief pitcher? Do you have another bucket of assets so we can either be taking as an income stream, a guaranteed income stream for a company, or do we have it inside of an asset that says, hey, I'm going to give you a bond-like return, guaranteed never to go backwards with zero risk? So some of it should be in each, but I see so many people like, oh, I'm just going to put everything there because they need to, because they're forced to, because they need that income. So if you have $1 million, you take a 4% distribution rule, that's $40,000. Well, most people are not living off $40,000. But what if we could take half that and generate that $40,000 to $50,000? You take the other half and put it in maybe some of that in the market. So again, there's a lot of strategies, but my point being, if our definition of retirement is unique to us, why are we taking a cookie cutter approach the same approach to our retirement. Because again, it's like, what's my desired outcome? What are my goals, my vision, my dreams? And are my actions aligning with that? So it's aligning our actions with our values. And I think if people will take a step back and say, what does I want to solve for? Not, this is what everybody else is doing, so I have to then conform your values around that. I think that's the wrong approach. So it's like, what do I want to achieve? What's important to me is it's certainty, it's clarity, it's guarantees. These are all important to me. And then aligning what we're going to do with our money to conform with that. So anyhow, there's just some observations about a couple conversations I've had around some retirement planning. And what I'd ask you to do is just like think a little bit unconventional, because conventional isn't cutting it for most people. They think that's what they want. And then once they get into it, they live this scarcity mindset for the rest of their lives through retirement. And then at the end of the day, what's our future? What's the conversation with our future self? If we could go back right today and say, what is the conversation that I should have with my future self? And what would they be telling me? What's the most important thing to the person that's 20, 30 years older than I am? My own self. And if that's like, man, I wish we would have had more certainty. I wish we had more guarantees, more clarity, what income is going to be like. So that's not a worry you have to be concerned about. Again, you can think up a lot of other things that you can be thinking about or worried about, but not having income, or where's the stock market at? And again, when times are good, it's interesting. When times are good, everybody's like, oh, it's always going to be this way. Well, not always. It's going to be different. We just know it's going to be different in the future. The thing that we don't know is like how different it's going to be. What's the thing that's going to creep up on us that we can't imagine? Is there a health issue? Is there all these other issues that are going to come up? We don't know. So it's like, what are we doing to give us as much guarantees as possible, and then being prepared for those things that might happen? So anyhow, if you have questions, I'd love to have this conversation with you. Reach out to me, hop on our website. There's a lot of content we put out, like, what are the 3 things that keep baby boomers up at night, right? And so we have some content around that. And it's like, financially, it's like, it usually revolves around like living too long, not having enough money. Do I have health issues? Can I leave a legacy? Those are things that are keeping people up at night. And we have answers to those. Let me back up. We have ways to empower you to find your answers, because my answer is not going to be your answer. We can show you some ideas, some thoughts, and do those things align with what you're trying to accomplish? So again, I'd encourage you to reach out to us and we can have a deeper discussion about this. But I also encourage you to share this with others and think about who in your network, who are the people around you that really should be having this same conversation. Everybody has the same fear, by the way. Not everybody. Most people in your sphere are thinking the same thing. It's like, even the person you think maybe has it all put together, it's got it all figured out, probably has the same doubts and fears because they're looking for information. It's interesting when you're going out and searching for information on the internet, there's a lot of opinions, but does that opinion apply to you? Does that opinion apply to your values and your goals and your dreams? Again, it's just an opinion. If we apply it as fact, sometimes it can get us into places we don't want to be. So anyhow, reach out to us. Love to have the conversation. Share this with other people. Like what you're hearing, so other people can be having some thoughtful conversations about what's next. Where do I go next? And how do I solve the problem of clarity and guarantees in my future? That's really what we're talking about. So anyhow, thank you so much for your time. We'll talk to you soon.
I appreciate you spending some time with me. Change starts with understanding, and action builds the future. We'll catch you on the next episode.